Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Over these past few weeks, we've been able to revel in the collector's bounty buff, which greatly increases the drop rates of a variety of different rare items, transmugs, legendaries, and mounts included. Surprisingly, I'm never really considered myself a mount guy, but I did spend my time getting every single mount that you could obtain from legacy raids and dungeons, and I had so much fun with it, but it definitely got me craving to farm even more mounts now that I got myself up and running. Patch 11.2, however, is going to be adding even more items for you to obtain, and there's a bunch of them, with Koresh being a hauntingly beautiful, this space void zone with a lot of the mounts to match the aesthetic of its environment. As somebody who's still looking to scratch that mount collector's itch, I'm definitely going to be going after all of the mounts coming out for the patch 11.2. And I wanted to put together a guide of all the different mounts that will be arriving with this seasonal update. The mounts that you can collect from endgame content, zone content, collectibles, trading posts, and basically every single mount that will become available as part of patch 11.2. Going over all of these mounts, the different looks for them, but also how to obtain these mounts in today's video as one of those little prep videos ahead of the content update. As always, if you guys want to see more guides like these for the patch 11.2 and beyond, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. The actual zone of Koresh is surprisingly and hauntingly beautiful. The actual islands, while they look kind of small, as they're just floating islands kind of secluded from one another, the zone itself is actually kind of big. And Koresh itself as an area has quite a few mounts that you'll be able to collect from a number of different activities. One of the most important activities you'll get to know pretty early on when you land on Koresh is phase diving, where there's actually two versions of Koresh. There's the overworld, but then there's also like the underworld of Koresh through the phase diving conduits. They'll give you extra activities and extra things that you can do, as well as a variety of different pets you'll be able to find throughout the zone and traverse it through a new way. As you complete activities within phase diving, you'll be able to collect a currency of these coins called untethered coins, and you'll be able to exchange it for a number of different cosmetics. Like, you'll be able to obtain some of the mounts from this vendor, like the acidic void creeper, which will only cost you 7 coins, as well as the lavender karak mount, which will cost you 10 coins. And this will be a currency that you'll be able to obtain over a week, so it is going to be something that you'll have to bank up for before you can purchase the mounts to add to your collection. Another mount that you'll be able to obtain through a weekly activity of Koresh is the Curious Slateback, which comes from a wriggling pinnacle cache, which is a bit of an RNG drop. Now, the pinnacle caches come from the weekly activity of the zone called Ecological Succession, where you have to essentially do a variety of different activities and quests to help Venari build a functioning ecosystem within Oasis. It's very similar to some of the different events of War Within you had, like the Theater Troupe, or maybe the Awakening Machine event, or like the Ashka Head, where you help out one of the different leaders of that faction and do a couple of quests for them, and then you do a final quest at the end. So it's a weekly activity of the zone, but it's a little bit more involved. We actually took a look at the weekly and open world activities of Koresh, and this one is going to take a little bit of time to unlock, and it's going to be a little bit more involved to maintain. So it's going to be something that's a little bit more, it needs a little bit more maintenance for any players that are more into casual open world content, so Ecological Succession should keep you fairly busy. Now, another mount that you can obtain from the open world of Koresh is the Perilous and Krolusk, which comes from Urmag, which is a rare found within phase diving version of Koresh. The actual location of the rare will be a little bit north of the Ecodome Rovan, which is the destroyed Ecodome. This mount, however, is not a guarantee, so this will be one of those mounts she'll be farming for a while in the open zones of Koresh. Now, another mount that you can obtain while phase diving is Tharb's Last Launch. So this will be found from a rare called Tharb's. It's kind of like a open world group rare, kind of one of the more powerful rares out in the open world. And you'll be found hovering at the top of the Oasis. You'll actually will see him out in your overworld, but you'll need to be phase diving in order to be able to actually interact with the rare and defeat it for a chance at the mount. But just like most rares, this mount is definitely not a guarantee. It is a drop chance, though hopefully not a low one. Now, another mount that you could obtain while in Koresh is the Translocated Gorger, which comes from Devourer Swarms. But to activate a Devourer Swarm, you first need to combine 20 Devoured Energy Pods together in order to be able to summon up a swarm. And the way that you can obtain this mount is by doing overworld invasions by the Devourers. There's about 4 Devourer attacks that keep rotating throughout Koresh every 15 to 30 minutes. And they usually start out with the Oasis, then they go to Ecodome Primus, the Atrium, and then in Tazavesh. And you basically just gotta drive away Devourers in 4 little invasion areas for a number of weeks, as basically weekly you could only get 4 of these energy pods, so it'll take roughly 5 weeks or so in order to be able to get enough pods together in order to be able to summon the swarm to get the mount. So this is definitely going to be someone you'll want to start working on week 1 and then keeping up every single week in order to eventually guarantee that the mount drops after you get enough pods. Another mount that's definitely worth watching out for in the open world is the Resplendent Karak. Though unlike some of the other mounts that drop from a rare or from kind of an event, this one drops from a world quest, specifically the Hope of Koresh. So you want to make sure to keep a close eye on your map whenever that world quest is active in order to go after the mount whenever it is made available. Outside of this, there are also a number of awesome looking mounts that will be obtained via an achievement. So this is something that you can work towards directly over a period of weeks. The first one being Terror of the Night, which they have a whole slew of these, I don't even know what to describe them, kind of like spider, bug-like type of flying mounts, like a horror monstrosity from the beyond that you'll be able to ride on. Those mounts will become available in one of the better ones, Terror of the Night, an acidic looking one will come from the achievement of Vigilante. When phase diving, you'll eventually be able to get like a capstone quest after doing a bunch of phase diving activities where you'll be able to complete a warrant where you're chasing after a very specific enemy, and once you defeat them, that's kind of like the end of that phase diving activity. And essentially you'll want to keep coming back to keep phase diving until you've gotten all the warrants for all 6 of the different enemies, although they may adjust the number of these, as it looks like data mine version of this achievement is a little different than the live version, so this number of 6 enemies could potentially be dropped down or increased depending if they add more warrants going forward. Now, another mount that you can obtain from the open world activities is the Phased, Lost, Slateback, which also comes from achievement Phased, Lost, and Found, where you basically need to collect all phase lost item appearances within phase diving. Now, within phase diving, you can find a lot of these transmog pieces of recolors of some of the previous expansion, raid, dungeon, and open world weapons and transmog items, but they'll be made basically in a different recolor, and there's a lot of cool little items to collect. So if you're a big transmog collector, you're probably going to go after all of these anyway, but you will need to collect every single one of them in order to obtain the Phased, Lost, Slateback mount. And you can collect a huge portion of them from phase diving orbs, which are found all throughout Koresh while phase diving. So be on the lookout for any of the orbs to collect more appearances in order to add more items to collection, but also eventually work towards the mount to add that to your collections as well. Now, another set of mounts that you'll be able to obtain is actually through the renown of the Koresh zone, which is going to be the Koresh Trust, which is a brand new faction that's being added for yet another update. And throughout this, again, you'll be able to get a bunch of cosmetics, a bunch of actually decent upgrades, at least really early on in the season, but also a bunch of little mounts for you to obtain. One of those mounts will actually not be on a vendor, but it will come from a quest instead, and that is Blueberry. Blueberry will be unlocked once you reach Renown 9. You'll be able to get a quest, a blue for you, and you'll be able to directly unlock a Slateback to add to your collections. Outside of this, you have 2 mounts that you can work towards. One of them is the Ruby Void Creeper, which is unlocked once you reach rank 15 with Koreshi Trust. And you'll need to basically trade in resonance crystals for this, so you may want to stock up on some of those crystals for this mount. The other mount, which will cost even more crystals, is the Terror of Waste, which is another one of those bug monstrosities that you can ride, but has this, like, I guess I would describe like deadly colors. You know how like some insects and bugs and animals out in wildlife have like bright colors in order to signify that they are deadly? I feel like this thing exactly does that. It has some really wild bright colors, but yet another monstrosity that you can add to your collections. Then of course we get the end game activities from raids, Mythic Plus, PvP, and delves, and there's a bunch of mounts that you can obtain from all three of those, such as the raids where AOTC gets you a Royal Void Wing. A Twilight Oath's End is going to be the ahead of the curve mount where you have to defeat heroic version of Dimensius in order to be able to add yet another gorgeous mount to your collections. Though defeating the boss on Mythic difficulty unlocks you the Unbound Star Eater, which is absolutely insane. It's like a Void Dragon, but taking that Void Dragon concept to an 11, where it's like a Galaxy Dragon instead. Actually might be one of the best, if not literally the best Mythic mount they've ever added into the game. Another mount that you can get from the raid is the Umbral Karok, which comes from the Glory of the Omega Raider. We have to complete a bunch of different achievements within the Omega Raid in order to be able to obtain this, so this is something that players can actually start working on day one of the raid releasing. Now, there's also two more mounts that you'll be able to obtain as you advance through the Renown of the Omega Raid, which has a bunch of catch-up components, very similar to how we had the Galatia Renown for the Liberation of Undermine. They're doing something similar with a bunch of catch-ups and rewards for doing the raid every single week. One of those will be unlocked at Renown 8 with the Manaforged Vandals, which is the Vandals Gear Glider. Another one of those Tazavesh style, Broker style gear gliding mounts which you can obtain from Shadowlands. And the last one being the Bone Freezer, which also comes from the Vandals at Renown 14. Then we have Mythic Plus content where you have two Void Flares, one you obtain from Keystone Master Achievement of at least 2,000 points, and that is the basically a Void version of the monstrosity, though this one is armored up. This one is obtained from the base achievement, but if you push all the way to 3k score and higher, you get this Scarlet Void, which is slightly different than the Void one. It's a little bit more pinkish. The armor is a little bit different, but the differences are not massive like they were in Season 2, but it's still yet another challenge award that you can obtain for that season. For delves, we've had the Delver's Original, the Globetrotter, but now we have the Mana Skimmer mount, which has a variety of different Void and Ethereal style customizations that you can add towards this. There's also going to be a variation of this mount for defeating the final boss of Kaiveza, which is going to be the Delves seasonal boss for Season 3. And you can see a preview of what a Delver's seasonal Mana Skimmer with all the different upgrades may look like, with all the different ethereal like batteries on the side, void energies flowing through it, and the Kaveza mount is basically going to be that, but with a slightly different, or a much better looking recolor that's a bit more prestigious. For those of you interested in PvP, we have two variations of the Vicious Void Creeper, one for the Alliance and one for Horde, so the recolor of this one is going to be slightly different depending on your faction, but it is definitely one of those Koreshi style mounts that is now added as a participation mount for the season. However, those of you that are a little bit more serious when it comes to PvP will be happy to know that yes, you have yet another Fell Bat, so you cannot skip the Fell Bats for the season. However, they've heard players' feedback and they wanted to give it one Fell Bat that actually embodies Koresh and the zone and the theme of the season being so Void Scarred. So they gave you a Void version, the Astral Gladiator's Fell Bat. And you can see this, the wings in particular, how the stars roll off of it, the purple armor or purple skin that it has, the armor to match it, how it has these like blue flames glowing out of the eye sockets and the shoulders. It's a much better thematic looking mount for this whole Void theme season. So it's yet another Fell Bat. Not a lot of players are happy about Fell Bats in general, but this is at least one that matches the theme of the season, with so many players actually excited to work on this one for Season 3. Now, some of the other mounts that we can also talk about are the holiday mounts, and one of the holidays is being updated for the patch 11.2, and that is Brewfest. Previously, there was a number of mounts you can get from Brewfest, usually from the final boss, but they added a new one called the Brewfest Barrel Bomber. So this is literally a mount that's made out of Brewfest barrels, and this one will drop from Corin Dire Brews. So this will be yet another mount that you'll want to farm out through the dungeon for Brewfest once the holiday is available. So better level a bunch of ults and at least get a bunch of characters ready to farm the living hell out of this dungeon once it drops in 11.2. Now, some mounts that you'll be able to obtain from Season 3 will come from endgame activities, some will come from very challenging hunts or really low chances to drop on rares. However, not all mounts are going to be made from challenge content or open world activities. Some you'll be able to directly purchase from the trading post as long as you got the currency. And there's a number of mounts that are being added in trading posts at some point in the future. We don't necessarily have all the dates of when these mounts are going to be made available, but we know that there's a variety of different recolors of these mounts on the horizon to arrive to trading posts near you. Starting off with the basics, we have the Honorary Breeze Strider, which is basically a Legion version of a Breeze Strider recolor. It looks fine, but definitely not anything to write home about. We also have a number of Elec mounts, starting with the Cinder Seared Elec, and there's 4 types. There's the Legion Forge, which looks absolutely amazing. The color scheme as well as the green looks just incredible. There's the Thunder Ridge, which is a little more pink and purple mix, as well as the Void Raised, which I was expecting to look really purple, but this looks a lot of red. I actually think maybe this is supposed to be the Cinder Seer because of like the fires within its hooves and its tusks, but maybe this is normal. Yeah, I was thinking Void Raised was going to be a lot more purple, so maybe the color schemes of the names don't quite match at the moment and they will change in the future, but there's at least 4 Alex for you to add to your collections. We also have 4 types of Headless Horseman mounts, which is basically an upgraded version of the Headless Horseman, which looks incredible. There's also the original one, which is the Ghoulish, which has the original colors, but you can also go in red, you can go with Chilling Blue, as well as you can go with the Horseman's Hallowed Charger. And the Horseman's or Headless Horseman set that's also will be arriving to trading posts looks amazing. The armor itself will match the mounts super well, so whether you want to get like the green, red, blue, or the golden version of this armor set and the mount, that'll definitely be something that'll be able to vibe together pretty well. There's also some love being given to dwarves and griffins, as we got some dwarvish looking griffin mounts from the Adorned Northrun Griffin. We have the Cinder Plumed Highland Griffin, as well as the Emberwing Sky Guide, which I really like the color scheme on this one in particular, as well as the High Shaman's Airy Griffin. So if you're a big fan of griffins, or if you're someone who just likes playing a dwarf and always wanted a mount to match your dwarven aesthetic, there's at least 4 of them that are being added at some point in the future. Now the final mount worth mentioning is the Zeiss Trustees Gear Glider, which we right now, as of this moment, do not know how to obtain this mount. It is something that's been data mined, but we have, at least at the moment, no idea how to get this. There isn't a new requirement, there isn't a new questline attached to it, it doesn't say it comes from a trading post or anything like that, so potentially this is something that will unlock in the future. Maybe there'll be some sort of a secret questline where we can get yet another gear glider to add to our collection. But yeah, this mount right now is a bit of an anomaly. We don't really know how to obtain this one specifically, but we do know that it's also somewhere in the files, so that'll be probably unearthed over time as we finally dive into the patch 11.2 content. So with that, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also join our Discord community, especially if you just want to keep up with any last minute changes before the patch 11.2 is here. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.